Okay, I'm Joe, he's Nick, and you are listening to the Nick and Joe Show, coming to you live from the Think Radio Broadcast Centre in Canada's national capital. And Nick is sitting with me in the studio tonight. And you know, Nick came in from the farm to do a live show right here in the studio because of the provincial lockdown. This is Nick. This is Nick thumbing his nose at the government. And Nick is thumbing his nose at the government for two reasons. The two reasons are Rod Phillips. If Rod Phillips could do it, and he's the bloody finance minister, and not get fired and not resign, which he hasn't as of this taping. He hasn't done it yet. So by the time, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to this, maybe he has been fired. Maybe he has resigned. But, you know, the kind of judgment for him to decide to get in a plane, spend all that money and go to a Caribbean vacation while his fellow citizens are tied up, locked in their houses, and that's just not on. But Nick is emulating him. So here he is, and and Nick's other hero, Randy Hillier. Shout out to Randy Hillier, who at least stands by his convictions.
There is no doubt of that. Randy and I have known each other for a long time.
Yes.
A long time. God,
we should get Randy on the show. He'd be a laugh. He'd be just a real hoot.
Let's do that. Maybe sometime in January, we'll see if we can book him in.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give him a call, actually, maybe over the season or whatever, the holiday season, and just touch base with him, see what he's doing. Well, I could call him tomorrow. Why not?
Sure.
It's tomorrow.
Don't call him after 5.
Okay. Anyway, what was I actually? Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to say it. Okay, so Nick, this is like of all of the bizarre things to be going on. Okay, that it turns out that the Boy Scouts of America and the Girl Scouts of America are embroiled in a nasty, vicious, bare-knuckle legal fight. Because there is blood on the floor, and there likely will be more blood on the floor before this is all over. And now, ladies and gentlemen, what could the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts possibly be fighting over? Well, apparently, now that the Boy Scouts are taking girls into their organization, and I don't think they call themselves the Boy Scouts of America anymore. What they do is they call themselves Scouts, BC, is it B?
BSA.
BSA, right. Which, of course, everybody knows stands for Boy Scouts of America, but that's what they're doing.
In Canada, they don't even do that. It's just Scouts.
Okay. So the Boy Scouts, we're going to refer them as the Boy Scouts because it may not be their official name, but that's who they are. That's what the organization is anyway. Apparently have been, according to the Girl Scouts, poaching girls. In other words, they're girls are now joining the Boy Scouts because they can join the Boy Scouts, and the Girl Scouts are having recruitment problems because girls are going over and joining the Boy Scouts. And the allegation is that the Boy Scouts are not being completely upfront about the fact that they're the Boy Scouts, even though they're not the Boy Scouts anymore. And as a consequence of this, apparently, allegedly, there are a number of girls who are joining the Boy Scouts without realizing that they're joining the Boy Scouts. They're thinking they're joining the Girl Scouts. Anyway, that's what this whole lawsuit is over. And, I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, you can't... If I was a comedian and I was writing a comedy routine, in a million years, I could not think of this one. This is one of those routines.
Can you imagine this on Monty Python? Oh, my God. It would be unbelievable. Now, I want to make a couple of... I'll let you expand on this, but there's a legal case that forced the Boy Scouts to accept girls. And secondly, the other thing that the Girl Scouts are not talking about, and there's a lot there, the overall arching story we haven't even touched yet, but I'll leave that to you. But there's another subplot here if you want. Maybe the Girl Scouts need to think about why the girls are joining the Boy Scouts in the first place. Maybe the Boy Scouts are doing things that the girls want to do too, but aren't offered by the Girl Scouts. Just a thought. Maybe, that the what they have on their itinerary for summer camp or whenever they get together, the girls find more compelling. That let me put it to you this way, as bluntly as I can. Maybe the Girl Scouts are boring and the Boy Scouts are exciting. And remember the age demographic. All of a sudden, boys at that age are becoming very interesting to girls of that age. They're going into puberty, and now all of a sudden they get a chance. I'm not suggesting there's anything nasty going on. I'm not saying there's anything nefarious going on. But guess what? When boys and girls hit a certain age, they all of a sudden go from yucky to wow. And that's what I think might be driving some of it. So when you put it all together, say, okay, the boys are doing the stuff the girls want to do. The girls want to. The boys aren't afraid to. They like the fact there's girls around because they're starting to really like girls. There's all kinds of different elements to this that have nothing to do with how Boy Scouts are being marketed. And the other thing is that maybe the Girl Scouts shouldn't be so surprised because, like every organization, if you don't change the way you market yourself, you die.
Right.
Your turn.
Okay. Well, first of all, they're not. Here's the thing: is that apparently the Boy Scouts are not marketing themselves as Boy Scouts anymore, just scouting.
Yeah, all you got to do is walk in the door.
So that's the real issue is that if they're not calling themselves Boy Scouts, then what's happening is girls, and the parents of these girls, they're joining their daughters to scouts, thinking that it's Girl Scouts. So it's not that they're chasing the boys; it's that they don't want. I mean, this is the allegation. Okay, the allegation is that these parents actually don't want.
And who's making the allegation?
Well, the Girl Scouts.
Exactly.
Okay.
What else would you say?
But it kind of makes a little bit of sense. But here's the thing that, I read a number of news stories on this subject, okay? And I have to say, Nick, what I found to be probably the most astonishing thing about this whole story is that nobody really nobody discussed what was the catalyzing event that has led to this. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is a perfect example, classic example of the law of unintended consequences, because the only reason that the Boy Scouts have had to change themselves to Scouts of America and have girls is because the courts said that they had to. So it wasn't like the Boy Scouts decided one day, okay, yeah, we want girls, let's change our name, and we're going to go now we're going to poach girls from the Girl Scouts. No. The courts, there were a number of lawsuits where parents were saying, well, why shouldn't the girls be allowed to join the Boy Scouts? Now, they do the same types of things, Nick, okay? So it's not like Boy Scouts were better than Girl Scouts. This was one of the things where you have activists that use the courts in order to force this kind of change. So this is what did they expect? You had two scouting organizations, the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. A group of activists get together. They push this court case all the way, I think, to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the Supreme Court says you can't discriminate against girls, so you have to allow them to join. What did anybody think was going to happen? Once you started allowing the girls to join the Boy Scouts, and then you just had one scout organization, is there anybody out there that really thought that the Girl Scouts were going to survive as a separate organization, or that they weren't going to have recruiting problems? It ought to be clear. And the fact that it was not clear, again, as I say, this is a beautiful, clear example of the law of unintended consequences. I have one more question, though, okay? My question is, are boys trying to join the Girl Scouts? And what happens if you have... What happens if you're like 11 years old? Are men trying to join
women's only gyms?
Well, what happens if you're 11 years old and you decide you're transgender?
Oh, God.
Or
you want to throw that in the mix?
Female? Well, how else...
I get it.
These are the issues, okay?
But to me,
These
it's even more
issues.
fundamental than that. If the Girl Scouts are going to claim that some of these girls are joining inadvertently the Boy Scouts, shouldn't the blame fall on the parents? Like, when you walk into a room full of boys and you're signing forms that has BSA right on the top, come on, how much rocket science do you need to be able to figure that out and say, oops, we're in the wrong room?
Well, it's Scouts BSA.
You know what I mean?
It's not. I know what you mean, but you don't. There are people that are not putting two together, but here's the thing, and this is...
They give their money back and send them across the hall.
Well, that's what's happening. See, that's the evidence that the Girl Scouts are saying, is they're saying, here are parents who signed their daughters up, who then realize that this is the Boy Scouts, even though it doesn't say Boy Scouts anymore, and they don't want their daughters in the Boy Scouts, so they have said, oh, we made a mistake. They withdraw their application and they get their money back. And there have been a number of cases like this, and that's the evidence that the Girl Scouts are using to show that there is this unfair marketing advantage or whatever.
It's a mistake by the parents or by the guardians or whoever this is. This is undermining the Girl Guide's case. If I'm the judge and I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, so the beef you have is with people who are too clueless to figure out which room they're in, not with the Boy Scouts.
But there's an element of that, okay? And maybe that might be the reason why, if the case gets tossed out, okay? That might be the reason why they would toss the case out. Look, Nick, you're making a very good point. Don't get me wrong. But again, I come back to, okay, the consequence of the courts a few years ago saying that the Boy Scouts could no longer be exclusively a boys' organization.
Ultimately, that's where the problem lies. I will agree with that. This
had to eventually happen. There's no justification for having two separate organizations. If the courts are saying that you can't have an organization that is exclusively one gender. Now, the irony is, to the best of my knowledge, is that this has only gone for the Boy Scouts and that nobody has suggested that the Girl Scouts has to start taking boys. Except, and I'm not aware that there's been any case like this, maybe there has, except in the case where, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, there's a boy who decides that he's a girl and wants to be treated and referred to as a girl, and therefore decides he's going to join the Girl Scouts. Now, I don't know what the legal implications are. I'm not aware, in that case, I'm not aware of any actual legal case that's been brought forward along those lines, but I could see, again, that's going to be a problem. So, obviously, it's the courts that have caused this problem. So, really, if the Girl Scouts or anybody wants to sue anybody, they should be suing whatever court, whatever judges created this problem in the first place.
Yeah, and look, everything I've said, everything, the point I'm making and all that stuff, all of that is built on that original argument you're making. If the courts had not come down the way they did on this issue, none of this would be an issue. But because they did, now everything, it goes up just like the tide. It goes up and then comes back down again. And when it hits the ground, when you have the logistics of running an organization, of course you're going to want to recruit. You want your organization to survive. Whether it's the Boy Scouts or whether it's a hockey team, whatever it is, you want your organization to survive. So you change and modernize your recruitment process. And if another group across